Ithaca. We are. I'm joined in the commentary booth today, or now, by Lazarus Tellraven, I believe, and we're going to be watching the initiative against Immediate Destruction. And the initiative have brought an Armageddon. They've brought 4 battle cruisers, an Execror, 2 cruisers in the Vedmak and the Vexor, and then 2 bombers. Lazarus, do you want to just run through what Immediate Destruction have brought?
Absolutely. Immediate Destruction is actually bringing in Navy Drake, Loki, Tengu, Drake, Cerberus, Osprey, Navy Caracal, Jackdaw, Caracal, Vigil, and it's important also to point out that they're not actually rapid light fit, they are heavy missile fit, so you're going to see a lot of kiting and some long-range missiles there. Their fleet has warped in at max range 50 kilometers, whereas the initiative team have come in at 30.
Yeah, both teams warping in at range, not really wanting to risk too much on the start. You know, if you put something at 0, something very bad can happen. It can be very unpredictable, and you know the match can be lost before it's even begun. So quite a cautious approach from both these two teams. Put them in at 30 or 50, see what happens. You know, scout it out, check out the grid before the fight starts, and make a plan before you probably get stuck in.
Yeah, but we'll say for the bands from Immediate Destruction, you get Thalia and Eris Guardian, so they can't bring the T1. Or they brought the T1 next year since everything else was pretty much banned out, and it looks like the match is going to be starting here in 1 second. As you see the boost pop off there.
I'm going to draw attention to the fairly sizable control bar of the initiative, which is probably contributed mostly to from that Armageddon. The newts on that Geddon, I particularly like this initiative comp with this Geddon and this 4 BCs. I think the Geddon personally is a really, really strong pick because you've got those range newts. So I mean, even with the officer restrictions on newts for this year's Alliance Tournament, you can still get long range newts with the Geddon. And yeah, you can close in on people and still get some significant control using it. And it's only 19 points as well, which is, I believe, 3 or 4 points cheaper than the Balgon. So yeah, in my opinion, the Armageddon a very good pick.
Yeah, and we also aren't seeing any E-War being pushed across the field besides the target panner, so no ECM, no damps or anything, as this heavy missile launcher team is burning away from the initiative as they burn across the field to keep range.
Yeah, it seems at the moment this Armageddon range on the newts aren't quite enough to get in range, but obviously the arena doesn't go forever. Immediate Destruction are going to have to turn around at some point, and then I'm sure those newts will start being applied, and we'll have to wait and see if that causes them any significant trouble.
It looks like the Hound from Ancient Lexi is taking quite a bit of damage and it's down. We saw there for just a second, we actually saw a missile damp going on to the Immediate Destruction Tengu, which is very interesting, that they actually had the foresight to fit it.
And the Hound is traded for a Vigil. I quite like the choice to primary the Hound. I mean, the Hound and the Purifier, both bombers, both very squishy and contribute a significant amount of DPS for the HP they've got on the 3 points. Good to get them off the field early, but yeah, trading for the Vigil, which will... I mean, the target paints on that Vigil probably going to boost the damage of the Navy Drake, the Loki, the Tengu, the Drake, the Cerberus, etc. quite significantly. So with that off the field, the application will be significantly reduced as the Navy Harbinger of the Paradigm for the initiative goes down.
Yep, that Vigil being taken off the board is a lot of utility gone. That target painter is very useful for the HMLs as they aren't able to apply full damage as well as, say, the rapid lights, unless they're shooting bigger ships, which the battlecruisers and the Armageddon should take full damage. I see newts being applied to the Tengu, and the missile disruptors are going on the Navy Drake. Starting to see the Armageddon drop as well as Navy Brutix. Armageddon is into half armor. The Executor Rex just not able to hold it up versus the HML damage. And I say
the Armageddon is definitely getting chunked, but they are now in range of this Immediate Destruction squad. The initiative team are all on top of them, and they are applying these newts to this Tengu. They're getting grappled as well, and I'd imagine pretty shortly he's going to start taking significant chunks of damage, and with only the Tech 1 Logi of the Osprey, it's probably not going to hold that long as he starts going to armor now.
Yeah, the Osprey is doing its best, but the Grappler and Web on the Tengu is going to keep it immobile as it drops into structure and it's gone. That's the first heavy missile ship down for Immediate Destruction. The rest of their ships looks to be spread out some. Actually, no, the Grapplers immediately applied to the Drake, so it looks like they caught their anchor and all the ships are on top of each other, which typically with these kiting scenes, you'll see them spread out and trying to keep them from catching them all at once.
Yeah, these two teams are pretty much mostly, for the most part, on top of each other right now, which is not going to suit the Immediate Destruction's game plan for this match with their kitey shield comp. And the Armageddon is actually tanking now. He's back up to about 80-85% armor, so not really making much of an impact as Immediate Destruction decided to switch to the Vedmak now.
Yeah, it's going to be really important for the rest of this Immediate Destruction team to scatter and be able to keep range from these grapplers of the Armageddon and the webs of the support ships. So, but it's not looking like they're going to be able to get away. You see the noose being applied across to the Osprey. The Navy Drake is dropping into armor. It's going to go very quickly.
Yeah, the Navy Drake of Rogaroo dropping into half structure now, and I believe, yep, he's gone. Quite close to the edge of the arena as well. Immediate Destruction mostly about 100 kilometers out, so they haven't got much leeway to play with the Edge of Glory.
Yeah, they are trapped in between a rock and a hard place here with the edge glory there, and not really any jump beacons within range for them to use. The other team also is fitting Warp Scramblers as the Purifier Ellie Spooth goes to go down for initiative.
And this is really not a good position to be, because once you get caught by this Armageddon and then everything else gets on top of you, you're just not getting away. You're just waiting to die at that point. You're not escaping using any method at all. I mean, the Vedmak of BMW 882 is taking some damage, but I think he's going to be held by the Execror as the Drake of Truian for immediate destruction starts to take some damage now.
Yeah, but it looks like all the battlecruisers are starting to pull a little bit of range from the immediate destruction team. And they have the Armageddon shielding the runaway to the micro jump beacons.
As the the initiative battlecruiser corps are just piling onto the Drake. I think they're just tackling whatever they can, whatever's in range. You know, get the grapple on it from the Armageddon, and then just bundle everything else on top of it. Get a web, get a scram, and then everyone just hits approach and just mashes all their gun buttons on him. And you know, he's not long for this world.
Yeah, immediate destruction made a huge mistake there, getting caught all clumped up, allowing the tackle to be spread so easily.
Yeah, I mean, when everything is within 20-25k and you've all burnt back in a straight line, eventually, you know, push is going to come to shove. You're going to reach the edge of the arena, and you are all going to get caught. So you need to be splitting up much sooner. They need to be saying, okay, these guys are going to be running into us face first. We need to be getting out away from them in all different directions. Because if immediate destruction are all, you know, 50-60k away from this clump of battlecruisers at the moment, they can, you know, kite them around. It's going to take a long time to get them down and catch them. I mean, shield naturally pretty fast.
Yep, and with these Navy battlecruisers all fitting most of the rails or the beams, they're able to project damage pretty far. And you have the large GPS of the Vedmak, and I say that the Executor is starting to take damage from the initiative. He is sinking into about half armor. His reps are being applied from the rep drones as well as his local rep. Actually, I don't think he has local rep. It's just the drones that are keeping him up at this point as they get a Scrappler onto the Osprey of immediate destruction, which is going to be probably the end of the match for them. I mean, once the Osprey goes down, they really don't have much to keep them up from these Navy battlecruisers.
Yeah, they've still got their support wings, sort of their smaller ships, the Navy Caracal, the Jackdaw, and I guess the Cerberus as well. But I mean, they're not going to be able to make any impact they haven't already made. They might be able to kill us Execror. They might be able to follow up with a kill on the Vedmak or the Vexor, but I don't think anything that they've got left is going to be capable of taking down any of those battlecruisers or the Armageddon.
Yeah, it was an interesting pick with the heavy missile launchers compared to the rapid lights. The rapid lights are quite high DPS for a short amount of time, whereas the heavy missile launchers do, I guess, less damage but more sustained, less burst, more sustained damage. And you can see the Exeter is about to enter structure as well, so they might be able to get that down, but it's going to be too little, too late.
Yeah, ultimately a pretty good match, well fought by both teams. But I mean, immediate destruction. I think they just needed to recognise what the game plan of initiative was earlier and just act accordingly, spread out, get away from them, try and buy some time for themselves. But they sort of backed themselves into a corner, right?
Yeah, it's really crazy that they were able to get that heavy grappler onto the Navy Drake there at the start. I mean, or not Navy Drake, the Tengu. Usually, you'd be able to out-kite a battleship, you would think.
Yeah, definitely not ideal, and now we're just pretty much waiting for this Navy Caracal and Cerberus to eventually go down. I'm sure dudes from the initiative team will dispose of them as quickly as they have for the rest of the team, so in order, these two ships will be going down.
It was a pretty sound victory for initiative once they caught that Tengu, and looks like the rest of the team was shortly to follow.
Yep, and also I think it's important to note that this initiative squad doesn't look to be anything particularly out of the box. It looks quite similar to some of the comps we saw last year, where you've got the Armageddon or the Valgorn top heavy point. You've got the 4 battle cruisers, and then you've got the Tech 1 Logi. So you know it's not giving away too much. It's not some secret strat that they've come up with that everyone is going to copy. It's well known, and they're securing a solid victory with it.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the immediate destruction should have brought a Huygens to give some a little bit of web range, keep things farther away from them. I mean, it's hard to say at this point, but something needs to be changed besides their anchor.
Yeah, I think if you're going to run one of these shield missile comps, you definitely need to have some sort of application in there, whether it's a Hugin or a Rapier or a Loki or something with some ranged webs and paints that can get away from you, keep things tackled down, apply some damage. But yeah, so the initiative taking a fairly comfortable victory, looking pretty convincing, 100 points to 32, and with that we're going to send it back to the guys in the studio.
You have some of the crew getting ready? Right here we got the commentating booth, and last but not least, the studio. Come on, have a look. Hope you guys enjoyed the stream.
Hi, I'm Gran Arcana, Test Alliance Head Diplomat. My interests are negotiating backroom deals and glazing the blue donut. My ideal fleet member is your entire corporation. If you want to fly with me, join Test today.
Initiative picking up a win there over Immediate Destruction, who drop into that lower bracket of the tournament. Still in it, and as we discussed earlier on, the team coming from the losers bracket has won every single Alliance tournament apart from one. So this could be a good tactical move for Immediate Destruction, or it could just be one of two losses to go out the tournament. You never know in double elimination. But let's just roll things back a little bit to the match before, the Goonswarm Federation versus, who were they playing? I've completely blanked. Lumpy, that's correct, yes. So we talked in the studio here about, is the Mittani going to be bait tanked, or is he going to be double bluff, no tanks, full DPS mods? And we can answer that question now by looking at the kill mail of the Mittani in his Navy Augurer, and we find that they have polarized pulse lasers. So going full all out, absolutely all out. Interestingly, 4 heat sinks. I mean, Suetonia, talk me through what we're seeing here.
This is crazy. I don't know why he has 2 fitting power grid rigs. Does he actually need that to fit it? Maybe.
I mean, does the Mittani have any skills on TQ is the real question.
This is pretty crazy though. With 4 heat sinks and polarized, I think he can put out like 800 DPS if he's on top of someone.
Yeah, it's just going to be absolutely vomiting DPS onto somebody. And this is the perfect example of how to meta your way into victory in the Alliance tournament. You just have to make your opponents think that you're going to do one thing and then do the exact opposite. And that's exactly what's happened here. They've made everyone think, hey, if the Mittani's on field, he's going to be bait tanked because, I mean, everyone's going to want to shoot the Mittani, so we'll just bait tank him up. And they've thought that the other team will think that, and they've done the exact opposite. The mind games, I mean, sometimes you risk outplaying yourself, but in this case, it's worked really well for them, and I believe there's a few more kill mails from that we can look at later on. But sometimes, and just to bring things real for a minute, sometimes we here at Eventy get accused of bias. We get accused of being perhaps aligned with Pandemic Legion or other teams such as that. We are completely and utterly impartial, as this video will truly demonstrate of Nash Cadaver, head of Plus 10 Gaming.
This would be like one of the best matches.
Oh, it's gonna go!
Why is Lumpy not shooting fucking drones?
It's gonna go! Oh, yeah! Come on, bitches!
Video that. Pull out the street later. Come on, bitches!
Truly an impartial organisation. So, any other highlights from that particular match?
Yeah, I believe we were talking about Ash's fit, which I'm not sure we have just yet, but...
Yeah, I know the team upstairs are building that kill mail in our lovely tool to show it up, and I think it might be ready now. We can throw that up on the screen as well. This is the absolution of Asher Elias, the FC. Also polarized pulse lasers and just heat sinks and tracking. I mean, you got to hand it to Goonswarm Federation here. They have outplayed everyone by just bringing polarized everything. That's incredible. I tip my hat to them. That's just fantastic. And I mean, Bart, why don't you tell us what's the big deal about polarized weapons? Why are we so hyped about this?
Well, if you put a polarized weapon on any ship, it makes the resistances of it go to 0. So a ship like an Absolution, which actually has a resistance bonus, completely loses that bonus. A ship like a Navy Augur, which is traditionally known as being extremely tanky, now is not as tanky. However, polarized weapons, they do, I want to say like 15 to 20% more DPS. So both of those ships have a ton of low slots because normally they're considered super tanky. You put polarized weapons on them, now they're still relatively tanky just because of the amount of armor they have, but they do way more damage, and they're also both the kind of ships you'd think, oh, those are the tankiest ships on field. Why would I shoot that? they kind of figured out a way to be like, why would you shoot it? Haha, I have 1,000 damage per second absolution fit. And they also put it on their, the team captain and the captain of Goon Swarm as a whole, because they knew it's like, these are the two people that they'll be like, oh yeah, we can't have any shot at those. They're the tankiest ships, they're gonna be repped. We'll just ignore them. They just turn them into massive DPS boats.
Yeah, I mean that's the sort of the PL play, is to like win the game in the meta game, not necessarily execution. And Goon Swarm just did that perfectly. Like I think that's my favorite match of the day in general, and also because of this. Thumbs up, guys. So let's move forward and look at the rest of the matches coming up. So we have imminently End of Life versus RVB. Now RVB is one of these teams that they're not a single alliance. Of course, there's Red Federation and Blue Republic, I believe. And occasionally they go purple and join up. And what you can do is you can compete in the Alliance Tournament as an entity other than an alliance if you fly together a lot. So for example, the Wrecking Crew team is actually composed of Purple Helmed Warriors and Honorable Third Party this year, I believe. RVB is one of those. And RVB bringing the only flagship Barghest. So Tony, tell us about the Barghest and the flagship Barghest in particular.
Yeah, so the Barghest is quite interesting, especially with the addition of Abyssal mods this year, because while you can't Abyssal mod the webs, but you can use an Abyssal Warp Scrambler, and the Barghest gets a 50% bonus to Warp Scrambler range. And if you had a perfect Officer Warp Scrambler on a Barghest with Claymore links, you could actually potentially scram out to about 44 kilometers with heat, which is pretty powerful if RVB have invested in that. Pretty strong.
And on the other side, we've got End of Life, who last year, Bart, they went 2-2, losing to Skill Yourself and Tuskers. So that's two pretty solid teams. They beat Waffles and one of my favorite team names. It must be Jelly because Jam don't shake. What do you think about the End of Life team then?
I believe End of Life has a relative tournament pedigree. They have done this several times. They've been competing for at least as long as that I've been playing, which to be fair isn't a super long time compared to some people. But we can't really, because they lost to a two top 6 teams at the bare minimum. Skill Yourself, I think, was 5th last year. Tuskers really probably would have gotten top 4 last year if they hadn't had such a rough bracket. There's a really high chance that End of Life is potentially going to win this just on the fact that they've played before. And RVB, any of the sort of MPSI groups, generally they have a lot of player rotation, so there's a decent chance they might either have some of these super experienced tournament veterans, or they might have 10 people that have never played in a tournament before. So kind of a wild card. It might be really good, it might be just something ridiculous like, I don't know, bringing 4 battleships and an Orthrus.
Yeah, and last year they didn't actually make it through the feeder rounds, so
yeah,
they were brutal. So
the feeder rounds were an absolute slog. I think they got knocked into the sort of the loser tier, and then unfortunately lost again on their 3rd match, maybe. But whatever it was, they didn't make it through, which is a shame because RVB have potential. They're one of those teams with a high turnover, but sometimes you get like some gems appearing out of those teams. So. Now, I'm going to get us some predictions because I believe we're almost ready to go to the arena. So I just like the concept of RVB, so I'm definitely going to back them. What do you think, Satonia?
I really like RVB because they've got the flagship Barghest, and I really hope they do experiment with the Abyssal Warp Scrambler. But I'm going to go with End of Life. They're just a solid team that just normally makes it through to the middle of the tournament all the time, so got to back them.
And what about you, Bart?
I'm going to go with RVB. End of Life's icon is a little bit too edgy for me.
There you have it. So let's see if the Flattle ship makes an appearance, and if it does well, as we hand over to the boys in the booth for RVB versus End of Life.